So I think we're all probably going through the mid-afternoon slump where we need like a little extra caffeine or something to keep us going. But alhamdulillah, I think the knowledge that we are gaining from this weekend, the interactions of connecting with our brothers and sisters, being in a spiritually uplifting atmosphere, should definitely be enough to see us through to the end of the conference, the end of the day today, bismillah. Bismillah. So the topic that we're going to talk about today is an important topic. And I think this entire weekend has been a weekend in which we're diving into socio-emotional wellness, our relationships. How do our relationships, our family relationships, our community relationships, our relationship with friends, our marital relationships, and our parental and spousal relationships, how do these impact who we are, how we interact, and even more importantly, how does that relationship impact the dynamics of our ummah, impact the generations to come? And there is probably no relationship that carries as much impact on future generations, on what the continuity of life looks like, no more important relationship than the relationship of parent to child. And this is why this topic right now, the topic of Tarbiya, and raising our children with ethical and moral guidelines, with a compass, equipping them with that compass throughout their lives is such an important topic, particularly now when we look at this time we're living in of liberalism, of secularism, of postmodern thought, in identifying this space around us that almost seems to be pushing our children to a place of elimination of the deen, of a rejection of faith, of stepping away from that which we as parents are attempting to guide our children towards. Now, for those of you who are here and who are parents, I have no doubt that you recognize the value in educating yourself on how to raise your children in the way that is most pleasing to Allah and the way that will, inshallah, provide that guidance for them throughout their lives. For those of you who are here in this room who do not have children, who maybe have not gotten married yet, who maybe are still, see themselves as children even, I'm happy that you're here. Because the process of tarbiyah does not begin after the child is brought into this earth. The process of tarbiyah begins way before that. The process of tarbiyah begins with how we see ourselves, how we carry ourselves, how we interact, how we see the world and how we respond to it. And when we look to the example of the mother of Maryam alayha salam, Imra'at Imran, we see that in Surah Ali Imran, we are told that the tarbiyah of Maryam alayha salam began when she was still in the womb of her mother. When her mother made that sincere dua to Allah Azza wa Jal in gratitude, in humility, in recognizing that she was blessed to carry a child although she was advanced in years, and she made that dua dedicating what was in her womb to the service of Allah. And in so doing, we see that prior to the birth of Maryam alayha salam, it was already written. And Allah Azza wa Jal responds in the Quran. We see the response to the dua of the mother of Maryam when she gives birth to Maryam alayha salam, and she says that she has given birth to the female and the female is not like the male. And Allah Azza wa Jal responds in the Quran by telling us that He accepted her onto His service. And so from the very beginning, when the child is in the womb, this is where the tarbiyah begins. This is when we begin to center that compass. And arguably again, even before that, how we center our compass will be indicative of how we may center the compasses of our children as well. So when we talk about the process of tarbiya and trying to better understand how we as parents can guide our children despite what we are seeing in our world today, what we are seeing not just in Western secular society, but honestly all over the world. I know last night, in the evening, I believe the 5 o'clock session, Sheikh Yasser was speaking about the LGBTQIA+ agenda and how do we respond to it? How do we react to it? Unfortunately, I wasn't here for that lecture, but I know that topic is one that is so prevalent and that we need to address. And it's just one rift in the moral compass that we want to guide our children towards. There are many more rifts. In our session last night, in our sister's session, we spoke about some of the things that our young women are encountering on college campuses, and our young men are encountering them as well. Issues of gender nonconformity, gender fluidities, issues of sexuality, issues in terms of, again, a secular agenda that is pushing our youth away from Islam. So what do? We start first and foremost, again, at the very beginning. We start with asking ourselves, even before being blessed with children, asking ourselves, what emotional baggage am I carrying? What emotional trauma do I have unresolved? Because if we ourselves are struggling with our own upbringings, if we are carrying emotional trauma from what we've experienced growing up, possibly from our own parents, then it is very, very difficult to parent our own children if we have yet to heal. And we always say healing is a journey. It's not a destination. You don't wake up one day and just say, I have healed. Right? It's a constant work in progress. And so I urge those of you who don't have children yet, and I urge those of you who already have children, to look at your own past first and ask yourself, what baggage am I carrying? What have I experienced in the process of mar tarbiya that may impact who I am as a father, that may impact who I am as a mother? And how can I work through those emotions to ensure that the process of tarbiya towards my own children is a sound process, a process that begins with dua, asking Allah Azza wa Jal to protect our children, to guide them, and to allow us to be the means by which that guidance can be delivered, by which that guidance can be taught. So start with that healing journey. Start with reflections, asking yourself, what is it that you've experienced? Because we look at certain difficulties in that process of tarbiyah and we see the cyclical impact. So hurt people hurt others. We were talking about this in the marriage talk previously. If you have experienced hurt in your childhood, the likelihood of carrying that hurt into your own parenting style is increased. Work on healing from the hurt so that it's not perpetuated. And ask yourself what that hurt looked like. There's an exercise that we often do with our clients called memory mining. And the process of memory mining is going back into the mind and seeking out those boxes in which maybe from our childhood we've kept very difficult memories, maybe memories of physical abuse, memories of emotional abuse, memories of sexual abuse, memories of trauma that has impacted us, memories of psychological abuse. And we've placed those traumas into these boxes and we've taped these boxes shut with lots of duct tape and shoved them in our minds. And if we don't open those boxes and begin the healing journey, if we don't intentionally open them with the guidance of a counselor, with the guidance of a therapist, with the guidance of someone who can work through it from an Islamic perspective, these boxes will open on their own later on in life. And so I cannot emphasize enough the importance of healing and not delaying your own process of healing in thinking like, I'm too busy now, my kids take up too much time. Who has time for counseling? Who has, the ability to get that? And I will keep hammering home the importance of counseling because I see the changes it can make in people's lives. And I want that. I want that for us. I want that for all of us as an ummah to collectively heal. Now, oftentimes when we talk about the process of tarbiyah, we look at it in 3 different stages. And we know that the sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam guides us towards looking at the process of tarbiyah in these 3 stages. In the first stage, from the age 0 to 7, we see that our children are like the master. Meaning this is the stage in which our households, we as parents, are the seat of security. We are the role models. We are meant to be the seat of security. We are meant to be the ones who guide our children the most during that stage. In the second stage of tarbiyah, between 8 to 14, this is the age of discipline. This is when our children need those boundaries, those bumpers on the side of the bed, even though they may rant and rail against them, but those bumpers keep them safe. Those bumpers give them the guidance that they need. And then in that last stage of tarbiyah, from the ages of 15 to 21, we see in those last 7 years that the child is like the vizier. This is the age of advisement, the age in which our children have been given, inshallah, the love, the security in that first stage. And they've been guided with discipline, with the yes and the no and the right and the wrong in that second stage. And now they are in that stage of critical thinking, of being able to respond. Why do you want to do this? What does it mean to you? And to rationally come to the right thoughts and the right responses. So let's go back to that first stage, that age 0 to 7. How do we set the compass at that early stage in terms of ethics or morality from an Islamic perspective? All we have to do today is turn on the television, watch a Netflix episode, look at any children's programming even to see that topics such as same-gender relationships, topics such as gender fluidity, topics such as, responding to desires, topics such as rebelling against parents, topics such as individualism and avoidance of collectivism are not just being taught in these programs, but are being really hammered into our children's minds. And yet this is the stage in which our children will still look to us as parents. And the little girl who sees her mom maybe cooking in the kitchen or typing on a laptop will emulate, in playing house, will emulate that behavior. The little boy who sees his father maybe on his cell phone or, on the telephone talking to a work colleague will emulate that behavior. So this is the age of emulation, but it's also the age in which we need to recognize and understand what messages we're giving to our children. So if we are sending our children, in the room, in the corner with their iPad and saying, go ahead, watch something, and we're thinking, well, Paw Patrol is fine or Coco Melon, but we're not realizing that there are also advertisements that are popping up, advertisements that are clearly directed towards our children and the susceptibility of their minds at that age. During the month of June, during Pride Month, we are seeing in the past 2 years the increase in the dogma of this same gender sexual orientation and the attraction and how often it is hammered home. So in that stage, when our children are looking to us, I promise you, your children are more likely to remember in their teenage years the time that you dropped everything, that you left the kitchen sink filled with dishes, and you left, maybe the cooking, and you gave them cereal for dinner that night, and you sat with them, and you played with them. And you sat with them, and you talked with them, and you sat with them, and you made time for them. Because this is the age in which they will look to you and they will want your company and they will want to be with you. So the child who is grabbing onto your leg and calling out, mama, 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 instead of pushing that child away and saying, I'm busy, I have a lot to do, I don't have time for this. Think of that stage, that age 0 to 7, when that child is looking to you, because it's a very short stage. And it's a short stage in which our children look to us as the ones who know. This is also the stage where we may be implementing for our children more of an attitude of memorization rather than an attitude of explanation. So in this age, this is where we may be telling our children, go memorize Quran, but we will not be explaining to them what this Quran is that they're memorizing. This is the stage where our children may emulate us and raise their hands and say Allahu Akbar because they see us doing it. But are we explaining to them what this means? How many of our children engage with our salah during this time of learning in a way where it is personally relevant to them in their day-to-day life? Do they understand that in entering into their salah and raising their hands up and saying Allahu Akbar, they are not just saying Allah is great, but they are saying that God, Allah, is greater than everything they are pushing behind them. That they are entering into a sacred conversation with the one who has created them. That the one who has created them is Al-Wadud, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. And that it is His compassion, His mercy, His love that will see them through the difficult stages that they will encounter in those coming years. How many of our children know this? Or do our children just know it's time to pray, go pray? Do our children just know, don't lie, don't hit, don't steal, and when they ask why, they're told, because I said so? The problem in teaching our children from a rote memorization standpoint, the problem in developing within our children a task-oriented obedience perspective is we lose sight of the critical thinking that they will be challenged with in the years to come. That when these children enter into high school and college, in that last stage of Tarbiya, when they are sitting in their Philosophy 101 class and the professor says, think for yourself. Is there even a God? When the professor says, what is religion? Do we need religion? And when this child who has always been told what to think, how to think, what to do, how to do it, not with explanation, not with reasoning, not with rationale, but because I said so. In that classroom, in that moment, that child feels empowered. In that classroom, in that moment, we have lost a multitude of our children. Because our children suddenly feel heard, they feel like they have a voice, they feel like they matter. And in all those years of their tarbiyah, they have struggled to feel that. Because they have always been told, do this, not that. And they've never been taught to think, to question, to understand. There is a beautiful book by Dr. Jeffrey Lang, and it's called Even Angels Ask. And I recommend it as reading for everyone, parents and those who may be parents one day. And in that book, he talks about the fear that we as a Muslim community raise our children with, the fear of asking. That when a child questions, who is Allah? When a child questions, why does Allah allow these things to happen? When a child asks, what is salah? Why do we need to pray? When a child asks, what is hijab? Why do I need to wear it? When a child asks, when they are young, we shut them down. We tell them, don't ask. We tell them this is halal and this is haram. Why? If it's not the because I said so response they are getting, it's because Allah said so. And yet we understand that even the angels who were created by Allah Azza wa Jal to worship Him, when Allah Azza wa Jal speaks in the Quran of the creation of Adam, we are told that the angels asked. The angels asked, oh Allah, will you send onto this earth someone who will cause havoc? And Allah Azza wa Jal responds to the questioning. The questioning is not shut down. The questioning is given a response. And so if even angels can ask, shouldn't our children be allowed to ask? Shouldn't they be encouraged to ask, and shouldn't we guide them towards the asking so that when they are in that stage, when someone tells them love is love and it's homophobic to stand against same-gender relationships, our children will understand how to respond because maybe they too have asked. Because maybe in that middle stage of Tarbiya or in that last stage of Tarbiya, they have come to you and had a conversation with you, trying to understand, if my best friend has come out as gay, can I still be best friends with them? And if they've been encouraged to ask, then they are asking us as parents, they are asking us as a Muslim community, they are asking us as their teachers, rather than asking the internet, rather than asking their classmates, rather than asking those who will lead them away from the perspective of morality that we are intending to guide our children towards. So that's the first stage, age 0 to 7. The stage in which we want to be able to guide our children and recognize how they look at us with stars in their eyes. The stage in which we want to role model behaviors for them. The stage in which we want to provide explanations even if they ask, but why? But why? But why? 1,000,000 times. Each time we will respond. And we'll respond with love, and we'll respond with patience, and we'll respond with care, and we'll respond with guidance. Because then they enter into that second stage. And that second stage from age 8 to 14 is the stage in which we as parents don't look so shiny and exciting to our children anymore. It's the stage in which the child's awareness becomes external, outside of the nuclear home. And the child becomes aware of what their best friend is doing, and the best friend becomes an important role model. And the child becomes aware of what, I don't know, Beyonce is doing, and what Kanye is doing, and what the Kardashians are doing, and what BTS is doing. And these become the role models. Because the child is growing, and as the child grows and begins to experience the world around him or around her, the child is now engaging and recognizing that the seat of security, the seat of safety, which belonged within the home, is not the only seat there is. And so they begin to experience the world around them. And this is the stage of facilitation and discipline. Facilitating the avenues and the opportunities for our children to be able to connect with those who will be good role models, being the house that the kids hang out in, being the soccer mom or the soccer dad that fills the van with children because you are providing that accessibility, being the parent who says, let's bring your friends and go to Six Flags. Being the parent who facilitates pathways so that as your child turns away slightly from the nuclear home and the immediate family, you know who they are turning towards. Bringing your child to the New Jersey Da'wah conference, but not bringing them and forcing them to sit in lecture after lecture, bringing them and telling them, bring a friend, bring 2, bring 3. After the program, I'm going to take you out to, I don't know, Starbucks, or I'll take you out to wherever it is, Dunkin' Donuts, and we'll get something for you and your friends. Create those atmospheres in which our children are drawn to alternatives, because what they are seeing in school, what they are seeing on TikTok, on Snapchat, on Instagram, may be very different from what you are offering them. How many TikTokers are in this room today recording New Jersey Da'wah conference, putting it online and being like, here's where it's at, yo. I don't know if they talk that way or not anymore, but you know, like, I don't think it's happening, right? I don't think it's happening. Because we need to create those spaces in which our children are also pulled to situations, to gatherings in which they feel heard. I love this conference. May Allah Azza wa Jal bless the organizers. And I know how much work goes into putting on a program like this, but where are our youth? When I walked past the young adult room earlier, there was a handful of young adults in there. When I walked past the kids room, I guess the one that's slightly younger, again, there were not too many. When I walked past the babysitting, mashallah, they have no say in it. So in that first stage, we're dragging our children along with us maybe to these programs. In that second stage of Tarbiya, when our children are starting to feel like the parents are not the only seat of connection, we need to figure out how to pull them in, how to draw them as well. Maybe we do need, a TikTok program. Maybe we do need something linked to Snapchat. Maybe we do need, just like we're putting together a matrimonial here, maybe we do need something for the youth where the program begins with basketball in the morning. I know sometimes in the conferences they'll do this, basketball against, Sheikh Ammar or Sheikh Navaid or Sheikh Yasser, right? Let's bring our youth here because that stage is so critical. And facilitating pathways where we're drawing them in is so important. So many people talk about the masjid being empty. And we keep building masajid, but our masajid are filled with individuals who are of the older ages rather than the younger. And we begin to recognize that our youth are looking for meaning, they're looking for purpose, they're looking for definition, but they may not be looking for it in the masjid. They are looking for it online. They are looking for it in their schools. They're looking for it on their college campuses. And so we need to bring it to them as well, to facilitate programs that meet our youth where they're at. So in that stage of discipline, learning how to say no while providing alternatives. So the child who says, I want to sleep over my friend's house, and you know that having a sleepover at this friend's house, maybe it's something you're not comfortable with, maybe the friend is not Muslim, maybe the family is one you're not comfortable with, or simply you don't feel comfortable having the child have a sleepover. What alternative are you providing? Is it simply no, and the why is because I said so? Or is it, let's not do the sleepover at John's house, but how about we do a program where everybody comes over to our house, or we do, not a program, a party, maybe a party where everyone comes over to our house and, we'll order some pizza, we'll, enjoy some videos together, providing an alternative, right? Creating spaces for our youth where it's not no with nothing else, okay? And creating those spaces that are safe, that help in terms of guiding them when we understand what is out there. This stage between 8 to 14 is also the stage of identity formation. It's when so many of our youth are looking for acceptance. And this is why we see a focus among teens, particularly in that age range, where they're going onto Instagram and looking at how many likes their picture has gotten, or on Snapchat, or on TikTok. And then when they are not finding the likes that they want, right? Posting something that's a little bit more risque, right? Posting something that's more controversial, responding and trying to seek out those likes. Why? Because so many of our youth in this stage are not finding those likes at home. What they're finding at home is criticism. What they're finding at home is a feeling that they're not good enough. What they're finding at home is a strictness where everything feels haram. So rather than being nurtured in the seat of security at home, they are feeling rejected, they are feeling put down, and then they go to school, and in school they feel different. Maybe they're the only Muslim or one of a few there. Maybe they're the only Arab, the only Southeast Asian, the only person of different skin color. Maybe they're sticking out because they're the only one that's not allowed to go to sleepovers. They're the only one not going to the spring dance. And I know it's not the only one, but at that age, at age 12, 13, 14, it sure feels like you're the only one. Maybe they're the only one that doesn't have a cell phone, that doesn't have a Snapchat, that doesn't have an Instagram. And I know I always get this question about, well, what age should we give them a cell phone? And that technology talk is probably one we should have another time. But really understanding your child, knowing your child, sitting with your child, speaking with your child, guiding your child in a way where it is comfortable for them, where they are not terrified if they make a mistake. They know that they can come to you. But at the same time, there are clear guidelines for them that make them feel safe. And that is that middle stage, the 8 to 14. Because as they're seeking out their identity, as they may be feeling that they stick out like a sore thumb, this is also the stage where we see so many of our youth gravitating towards identifying as part of the LGBTQIA+ agenda or community. And the reason why we are seeing more and more of our youth gravitating towards this community is because this community uses the tagline, "Love is love." This community talks about unconditional acceptance. This community talks about embracing your differences and holding on to them. Which when you look at each of these individually, love, acceptance, embracing differences, this sounds a lot like our deen. This sounds a lot like our Islam, when the Rasul ﷺ reminded us that we are like strangers, that as Muslims we will be like strangers, so glad tidings to those strangers, that we will be different, but that Allah Azza wa Jal, Al-Wadud, is the one who loves us beyond any earthly measure. That love is existent in our deen, in our faith, in who we are as Muslims. That acceptance and tolerance of one another within our ummah is an important part of our faith as well. And yet we are losing our children, and their identities are being formulated by another community, because how accurate are we in acting upon these elements of our deen? How accepting are we of our own children? How tolerant are we of our own children's journeys, of their questions, of what they may ask and what they struggle with? How open are we in discussing with them topics? Because if we are not, they will find people who are. And if we are not those people, then our children will move in that direction of secular liberalism, and they will move away from that which is most beneficial, our deen as their identity, their worship of Allah as a pathway towards contentment. Now this leads us to the last stage of Tarbiya, the age of 15 to 21. When we said this is the age in which our children are like the vizier, the age of advisement, the age in which the child who comes to us maybe at age 17 or 18 saying, "I want to go to prom," the same child who maybe in the younger years we guided them towards rational thought, towards understanding, towards explaining the why and the what and the how. The same child who in those middle years had clear right and wrong, no and yes, discipline from a place of love, not from a place of anger, not from a place of fear. Now this child comes to you at 17, 18, says, "I want to go to prom," rather than our first reaction being like, "Astaghfirullah, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. What have I done to deserve this child?" Instead, our response may be, "Why? What is it about prom that seems appealing? If you were to go to prom, what do you think you would do there? What could be negative about going to prom? What alternative could we come up with for the evening of prom?" Now imagine the conversation unfolding in this way. Imagine speaking to our children at this stage, in an age of advisement, where we are encouraging critical thinking, where we are encouraging rational thought, and we are personalizing it. Because this is the way of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We see it in the example of the young man who came to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam when he sat with the Sahaba, and the man said, "I want to fornicate, I want to commit zina." And the Sahaba, when they heard this man saying this, they looked at him with dismay, and they wanted to get up and really, tell this man, "How could you say something like this? How could you speak of such a sin in front of the beloved Messenger of Allah?" And the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam put his hand up and asked them to wait. And he turned to the young man who was in that age of advisement, and he asked him, He asked him, would you want someone to do this to your sister? And the man said, no. He asked him, would you want someone to do this to your mother? And the man said, no. He said, would you want someone to do this to your future daughter? And the man said, no. And the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, well, then the person you will do this with is someone's daughter. The person you will do this with may someday be someone's wife. The person you will do this with may someday be someone's mother. And so the youth understood, because he was asked to think rationally. He was not told, this is haram, astaghfirullah, how could you even think that? The recognition of the emotion and the desire being there was validated, it was understood, and it was responded to in a personalized way that spoke to the youth. And then the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam placed his hand on the heart of the young man and made sincere dua that Allah Azza wa Jal would remove this desire from his heart. And the man became one of the foremost Sahaba within the community, leading other youth in the worship of Allah. So I see that my time is up. I see the red flashing light on the screen ahead of me. And I know that there is so much more that we can talk about when it comes to Tarbiya, when it comes to raising our children. But I feel if there is something that we can all take away from this conversation, from the topic of Tarbiya, it's to recognize and realize that we all play a role. And we all play a role not just towards our own children, but to the children of our neighbors, to the children of our friends, to the children of our siblings, to the children of our community, and to the future children who have not yet been born. And the role that we play is first to heal ourselves by turning to Allah Azza wa Jal, by asking for guidance in healing our emotional traumas, by asking for a means, a help that can help us through it, and by projecting that healing journey and utilizing it in the process of raising our children. So I pray that Allah Azza wa Jal allows all of us to heal from our past traumas, our past difficulties, and any parenting difficulties that we may have encountered in our own upbringing. And I pray that Allah Azza wa Jal allows us to be of the best of parents to our own children and the children of the Ummah. And I pray that Allah Azza wa Jal protects our children and the children of generations to come, keeps them on the straight path, and allows them to grow in the best of way in His worship, seeking contentment always. Jazakumullahu khair. Assalamu alaikum.